obviously, first things first, this old railing has got to come out. So now that the existing handrail has been removed, I've gone ahead and laid the new flooring, but I've laid it past where the old handrail used to be and over the opening of the newel post. So that way when I build the new bottom rail and the new post, I can tie it in with the existing flooring, and that's gonna look extra Gucci. So why don't we rip on down into the shop and make a start on the parts for the new handrail. So if you're familiar with this channel, you know when I build stuff for myself, I like to make it out of this rough sawn white oak. And today is no exception. And usually when I begin a new project from scratch, I like to break down my rough material just slightly bigger than the size of my components. That way it's a lot easier to handle when I mill it all up and I get the most out of my material. Okay, cool, so now that all my rough components are nice and flat and at 2 inches in thickness, I can put aside the longer lengths, which are for the handrails, and make a brief start on the newel posts. For the main 4x4-inch post, as I can't seem to find any 4-inch white oak material here, I'm gonna have to make my own. So my plan for this newel post was to make it look like one solid piece, and because I book matched my material, it's pretty damn convincing, so I'm happy with that. So my plan with the new newel post is to attach it the exact same way as the existing one, by shooting it through the flooring and then attaching it to the framing of the house. Now that will be plenty strong enough to hold the newel post, but before the carpet was wrapped around it so it hid that transition. So I'm gonna have to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to cut a hole in the flooring to receive the newel post, but I'm going to cut it 1/4 inch smaller all the way around. And the reason why I cut that hole smaller than the actual thickness of my post is because once I've marked out the height of my post where it's going to sit on the floor, below that mark I'm going to remove 1/4 inch all the way around on my table saw. So now with all that cut out, it fits nice and snug in the hole. I have plenty of room to attach multiple fixings to the framing of the house, and it sits nice and snug to the floor. So I'm not going to permanently fix this down just yet. I want to do that once the whole thing's kind of glued together. So for now, I'm going to make a start on this bottom rail. So my plan with this bottom rail is to replace it with a piece of white oak to match the handrail. And I'm going to make it in the way that hides this awkward transition between the drywall of the stairwell and obviously the rest of the room. And now that I got the position of the main post here, I can make a mark from the outside of the post parallel all the way down to the other wall. And then mark and cut out that small section of flooring using my track saw. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, that was probably the scariest and most expensive cut I've ever done in my whole woodworking career, but it turned out nice and straight and I'm happy with it. So with that all cut out, I have this really long length of 3/4 inch thick white oak to match the rest of the handrail, and my plan is to rip it down on my table saw to fit inside of that cutout. So you notice it does sit real nice against the flooring here, but there is a bit of a discrepancy in height between the two. To overcome that, I'm going to cut a rabbet on the underside of the bottom rail most of the way across. And now with the rabbet cut out on the underside, I also went ahead and smoothed over all of the corners. And it fits pretty damn good now. It has a real nice transition towards the flooring, and it also hides the horrible transition from the drywall. And now that I'm at this stage, I'm going to put the post and the bottom rail aside and make a start on the handrail. So as my material is already milled up to 1.5 inches in thickness, I'm just going to have to rip it down on my table saw to 3.5 inches in width. Okay, so now with the handrail cut, obviously I can't leave these real sharp square edges because that would be extremely uncomfortable. But I also don't want to put a heavy round over on there because I don't really like the look of that. So I found this thumbnail router bit, which compared to a traditional round over, it's obviously a lot less subtle. And it's not designed for the profile that I'm trying to create, but I feel like I can make it work. And now I basically just have a real long bar of soap, but I'm okay with that because it looks real nice and it feels real nice on the hands too. So now I can go ahead and measure from my plumb newel post to the wall and then cut the handrail to that measurement. Okay, cool, so now all my parts for my handrail are all pretty much ready to go. But before I go ahead and figure out what I'm gonna do with the spindles, I want to be able to connect the handrail and the post and all that stuff together. As I'm not going to be using a half newel post against the wall because it looks a lot cleaner without, I'm going to be attaching the handrail to the wall by using one of these double threaded screws that I picked up from my local hardware store. And I'm going to deal with that when I come to install it. But to attach the railing to the post, I'm going to be using dominoes. And now finally we can move on to the spindles, to which I picked up these round metal ones, which are going to look real nice against the white oak. So trying to figure out the equal spacings between your spindles can be kind of an intimidating task. But nowadays it really doesn't have to be, because there's a bunch of free spindle calculators online for you to use where you just type in your measurements and it'll give you the spacing that you need. So a good rule of thumb is to lay out your measurements from your post, because if you're making a railing like mine and it goes to a wall, more often than not, that wall won't be plumb, but your post will be. And I've been told in the past that the minimum spacing between the spindles has to be smaller than your fist or a baby's head. Well, my fists are pretty big and my baby's head has always been massive. So a good rule of thumb is to keep that less than 4 inches. And once my spindles are marked out, I picked up this Forstner bit, which is the same thickness as my spindles. So now at the bottom rail, I can drill all my holes a ½ inch in depth. And then on my top rail, the handrail, I can drill them at 3/4 inch in depth. Okay, so now all the spindle holes are all drilled out. I also went ahead and drilled a smaller hole in a few of them because I'm going to screw this down, and that way the spindles will hide the head of the screw. So now I can give everything a real good sand. Conceal everything that I won't be able to get to once the whole thing is installed. Attach that double threaded bolt in the center of the railing that's going towards the wall. And now I can get this beast upstairs installed with a couple of coats of finish. And that, my friends, is how it's done. And I'm beyond stoked how this handrail turned out.